Kim Kardashian just looked directly into a podcast microphone and said the quiet part out loud, and Meghan Markle is absolutely scrambling right now with nowhere to hide. The reality television mogul, the woman who has built an empire on knowing exactly when to speak and precisely what to say, has just confirmed every single suspicion that royal watchers have been speculating about for months. That infamous Montecito party photograph, the one that vanished from the internet faster than Harry's credibility, was posted with full Sussex approval. They said yes, they were in communication. They thought it was, in Kim's devastating words, totally cool. And then they panicked like amateurs when someone finally checked a calendar. Let those words sink in for a moment, folks. The Sussexes, who have spent years positioning themselves as media-savvy rebels who left the royal family because they wanted to control their own narrative, gave explicit permission for a celebrity photo op and then lost their minds when they realized they had been photographed partying on the eve of Remembrance Day. Kim Kardashian's exact quote is absolutely brutal in its simplicity. She said they realized it was so silly. That is not a defense of the Sussexes. That is not Kim being diplomatic. That is a woman with one of the most sophisticated public relations operations on the planet, publicly calling Harry and Meghan amateurish while maintaining perfect deniability. The Kardashian public relations machine operates at what insiders call palace-level slickness, and that comparison is deeply intentional. These are people who have survived every scandal imaginable, who have turned leaked tapes and family feuds and divorces into brand-building opportunities. They do not make mistakes with social media posts. They do not accidentally upload photographs without considering every possible angle. When Kim Kardashian posts something, it has been vetted, analyzed, and strategically timed. So when she reveals that the Sussexes approved the photo and then demanded its removal, she is not sharing innocent gossip. She is delivering a calculated strike that leaves Harry and Meghan with absolutely no credible response. Sources close to the situation are already describing this as a masterclass in reputation warfare. One industry insider put it bluntly, saying Kim just threw them under the bus while smiling sweetly, and there is nothing they can do about it. Another observer noted that the Kardashians have decades of experience handling media crises, while the Sussexes cannot even manage a party photo without creating an international incident. The contrast is absolutely devastating, and it exposes a fundamental truth that Meghan and Harry have been desperately trying to hide. They are not the media geniuses they think they are. They are not sophisticated operators who outsmarted the British press. They are simply outmatched by people who actually understand how this game is played. But the real humiliation is not just that Kim exposed their panic. It is that she revealed the approval process in the first place. And what that tells us about the Sussexes' judgment is even more damning. Back in November of last year, the internet exploded when photographs emerged from an exclusive Montecito gathering that read like a who's who of celebrity royalty. Harry and Meghan were there, naturally. Surrounded by the glittering elite of Hollywood and Silicon Valley, Kim Kardashian was there. Jeff Bezos made an appearance. The guest list was essentially a billionaire's fantasy dinner party, and right in the middle of it all stood Prince Harry, wearing something that would come back to haunt him in spectacular fashion. A poppy, the small red flower that symbolizes remembrance for fallen soldiers, pinned to his chest at a celebrity bash just before one of the most solemn days on the British calendar. The photograph appeared on Kim Kardashian's social media, as these things do when you are dealing with one of the most followed women on the planet. It showed the Sussexes looking glamorous and connected, rubbing shoulders with the kind of A-list celebrities they have been desperately courting since abandoning royal life. For a brief moment, it probably seemed like exactly the image Meghan's team wanted to project. Successful, beloved, part of the inner circle, and then someone apparently did the math on the calendar, and all hell broke loose. Within hours, the photograph vanished from Kim's account. Not moved, not archived, completely deleted, as if it had never existed. And of course, because nothing ever truly disappears from the internet, that deletion became the story. Speculation ran absolutely rampant. Royal watchers demanded to know who had ordered the removal. Was it the Kardashians protecting their brand? Was it the Sussexes in full panic mode? Had someone from the palace reached out with concerns about optics? For months, absolute silence from Camp Sussex. They refused to address it, refused to explain, refused to acknowledge that anything unusual had happened at all. Commentators at the time noted how suspicious the whole situation appeared. One royal correspondent observed that the speed of the deletion suggested genuine alarm rather than a casual decision. Another pointed out that the Sussexes have a well-documented pattern of trying to control their image in ways that inevitably backfire. And now, months later, Kim Kardashian has gone straight to the source and put the record completely straight. The Sussexes approved the photo. The Sussexes panicked. The Sussexes demanded it disappear. And in doing so, they created a scandal 10 times bigger than the original photograph ever would have been. Kim even offered advice during her podcast appearance, and it landed like a perfectly aimed dart. She said they should have leaned in when the noise got loud. Allow me to translate that from Kardashian speak into plain English. She is saying they should have owned the moment instead of running from it like frightened children. She is saying their instinct to hide made everything worse. She is saying, without saying it directly, that they do not know what they are doing. But the permission revelation is just the tip of this iceberg, and what Kim disclosed about their communication process exposes something far more troubling about how the Sussexes actually operate. Let us be absolutely clear about what Kim Kardashian revealed during that podcast appearance, because the implications are staggering. She explicitly stated that her team was in communication with the Sussexes before posting that photograph. This was not a paparazzi ambush. This was not some unauthorized leak from a sneaky party guest with a camera phone. This was a coordinated, approved, fully sanctioned celebrity photo opportunity that Meghan Markle's team signed off on. They said yes. They thought about it. They made a deliberate decision to be photographed alongside Kim Kardashian at an A-list Hollywood party, and then they completely fell apart when consequences arrived. The revelation demolishes any possible narrative that the Sussexes were somehow victims of an overeager social media post. Sources familiar with celebrity public relations protocols say this kind of communication is absolutely standard at high-profile events. One industry insider explained that when you have multiple celebrities at a gathering, their teams coordinate on photographs to ensure everyone is comfortable with what gets posted. Nobody gets caught off guard. Nobody gets ambushed. Everyone knows exactly what is happening, which means Meghan's team specifically approved the celebrity photo op, almost certainly hoping for exactly the kind of positive A-list association coverage it was designed to generate. Think about it from their perspective for a moment. Here is Meghan, desperately trying to establish herself as a legitimate Hollywood player after years of failed projects and broken deals. A photograph with Kim Kardashian, one of the most famous women on earth, surrounded by billionaires and celebrities, would be pure gold for her image. It would suggest acceptance. It would suggest arrival. It would suggest that the woman who could not keep a podcast deal is somehow still part of the inner circle. Of course they approved it. The question is what happened next. Royal commentators are calling this moment more than simple embarrassment. One described it as a disaster for the Sussex public relations team that exposes fundamental incompetence at every level. Another noted that professional communications teams are supposed to prevent exactly this kind of catastrophic oversight. Checking a calendar, considering how a photograph might play in different markets, anticipating negative reactions, these are basic functions that any competent publicity operation should handle automatically. The fact that nobody apparently realized they were approving a party photograph on the eve of Remembrance Day suggests either stunning negligence or a team so disconnected from British sensibilities that they did not even consider the optics. And here is the truly damaging part. Harry was wearing a poppy. The symbol of military remembrance was literally pinned to his chest while he smiled at a celebrity bash. If his team had been paying any attention whatsoever, that detail alone should have triggered alarm bells loud enough to wake the neighbors. Instead, they approved the photo and only panicked after the entire internet pointed out what they should have seen from the beginning. But the way Kim delivered this information reveals something even more calculated about how the Kardashians approached this entire situation, and the strategy behind her words is absolutely devastating for Harry and Meghan. Kim Kardashian did not become a billionaire by accident, and her podcast comments about the Sussexes demonstrate exactly why she has outlasted every scandal, every critic, and every person who has ever underestimated her. On the surface, her words sounded almost gentle. She mentioned Meghan's sweet relationship with her mother, Kris Jenner. She described the situation in terms that seemed diplomatic and understanding. She even appeared to sympathize with their position. But anyone who understands how public relations warfare actually works could see immediately what Kim was really doing. She was destroying them while appearing gracious, and it was absolutely masterful. This is classic Kardashian strategy, perfected over 2 decades in the public eye. You never attack directly. You never appear petty or vindictive. You simply tell the truth in a way that makes your target look foolish while you come across as reasonable and mature. Kim revealed that the Sussexes approved the photo, which makes them look incompetent. She revealed that they panicked afterward, which makes them look amateurish. She offered advice about leaning in, which makes them look like they do not understand basic media management. And she did all of this while saying nice things about Meghan's relationship with her mother. Absolutely brutal. Industry observers immediately recognized what was happening. One public relations expert described it as a textbook example of how to end a friendship while maintaining plausible deniability. Another noted that Kim left the Sussexes with no viable response options. If they stay silent, the story stands unchallenged. If they push back, they look petty and combative. If they try to clarify, they draw even more attention to their original mistake. Kim has essentially trapped them in a no-win situation while positioning herself as the gracious party who simply told the truth. The Sussexes, according to those familiar with their thinking, do not really have a right of reply here. Any response would begin to look like a conflict, and given that Kim just exposed their judgment as questionable at best, picking a public fight with one of the most media-savvy women on the planet would be absolutely suicidal. They have to sit there and take it. which is perhaps the most humiliating part of this entire situation. The couple who left the royal family because they wanted control over their own narrative now has zero control over a story that makes them look like complete amateurs. Kim also revealed almost as an afterthought that the relationship between the families has seemingly cooled since the incident. Sources suggest they have fallen out over the whole affair, which means the Sussexes have managed to burn yet another Hollywood bridge. One industry insider observed that alienating the Kardashians is a special kind of achievement in Los Angeles, given how connected and influential that family remains. Another noted that this is becoming a pattern, with the Sussexes leaving a trail of damaged relationships wherever they go. But the Kardashian takedown exposes something even more fundamental about Harry and Meghan's entire approach to public life, and it reveals an identity crisis that has been building since the moment they left the palace. Royal commentators have been circling around this observation for years, but Kim Kardashian's revelations finally bring it into sharp focus. The Sussexes have absolutely no idea who they are or who they want to be in the public eye. They are caught in a constant, exhausting tug-of-war between wanting the glamour of celebrity life and desperately clinging to whatever quasi-royal respectability they think they still possess. And the Montecito party scandal demonstrates exactly how that confusion leads to disaster after disaster. Think about what they were doing at that party in the first place. They were attending what one source described as an incredible A-list celebrity bash, rubbing shoulders with billionaires and reality television royalty and tech moguls. This is pure Hollywood networking, the kind of event that screams celebrity lifestyle and social climbing. And they loved it. They approved photographs that would show them in exactly this light. They wanted the world to see them as part of this elite circle, accepted and celebrated by the people who actually matter in Los Angeles. That was the image they were actively cultivating. And then, apparently within hours, someone realized how that image might play in Britain. Suddenly, the celebrity glamour they had eagerly embraced became a liability. Suddenly, the A-list party became a potential scandal. Suddenly, all those carefully approved photographs needed to disappear because the prince who positions himself as a devoted servant of veterans was pictured partying on the eve of Remembrance Day. The whiplash must have been absolutely dizzying, and it reveals the impossible position they have created for themselves. One royal expert put it perfectly, saying they cannot decide whether they want to be celebrities or quasi-royals, and they end up failing at both. Another observed that this pattern repeats endlessly with Harry and Meghan. They make bold moves designed to establish their celebrity credentials, then immediately second-guess themselves when they remember they are supposed to be maintaining some kind of dignified distance from the entertainment industry. The result is chaos, confusion, and scandals that would never have existed if they had simply committed to one identity or the other. The constant scrambling between these two worlds is becoming impossible to manage. You cannot simultaneously court Kim Kardashian for photo opportunities and maintain the solemn dignity expected of someone who wants to be taken seriously as a royal figure. You cannot attend celebrity parties and then panic about how it looks to veterans. You cannot chase Hollywood acceptance while clutching your royal titles like they still mean something. At some point, you have to choose, and the Sussexes seem constitutionally incapable of making that choice. But the identity confusion becomes even more devastating when you consider what Harry wore to that party, and why the poppy on his chest transforms this scandal into something far more damaging than mere embarrassment. Prince Harry has built his entire post-royal identity around one pillar that seemed genuinely unassailable. His military service and his devotion to veterans have been the foundation of everything he has tried to accomplish since leaving the palace. The Invictus Games, his advocacy for wounded warriors, his public statements about the importance of supporting those who served. This was supposed to be his authentic self, the part of his royal legacy that transcended the petty scandals and the Netflix drama. And then he showed up at a celebrity party wearing a poppy just before Remembrance Day, and the entire foundation cracked. The poppy he wore in that photograph was not just a fashion accessory. For British people, for veterans, for anyone who understands what that symbol represents, it is a statement of profound respect for the fallen. It says you remember. It says you honor their sacrifice. It says you understand the weight of military service and the cost it demands. And there it was, pinned to Harry's chest while he smiled at a Hollywood party surrounded by reality television stars. The contradiction could not have been more stark if someone had designed it specifically to undermine his credibility. What makes this even more catastrophic is the aftermath. By demanding the photo's removal, by panicking about the optics, Harry and Meghan inadvertently drew far more attention to the Remembrance Day timing than anyone might have otherwise noticed. A party photograph buried among hundreds of celebrity posts might have passed with minimal comment. But a photograph that disappeared mysteriously, that sparked weeks of speculation, that became the subject of podcasts and royal commentary months later, that is a completely different story. They transformed a potentially awkward moment into a scandal that keeps regenerating. Sources close to military communities are particularly scathing in their assessment. One veteran advocate said Harry's poppy has started to look like a costume piece rather than a genuine symbol of remembrance. Another observed that you cannot claim to champion veterans while partying through their most sacred day and then trying to cover it up. The word that keeps appearing in these discussions is devastating, performative. People are beginning to question whether Harry's military advocacy is sincere or simply a brand positioning exercise designed to give him credibility he has not actually earned through his post-service behavior. For a man who has staked so much of his public identity on being a soldier's champion, this accusation is absolutely catastrophic. His military connection was supposed to be the thing that made him different from other celebrities, the authentic core that justified his continued relevance. If veterans in the military community begin to view him as someone who exploits their sacrifice for personal image management, he loses perhaps the only genuine asset he had left. But the damage from this scandal extends far beyond Harry's military reputation, and the public relations response reveals a level of incompetence that experts are still struggling to comprehend. Here is a question that public relations professionals are still asking themselves months after this scandal erupted. Did Harry and Meghan's team genuinely believe that a photograph posted by Kim Kardashian could simply vanish from the internet without anyone noticing? Because if so, that represents a level of strategic incompetence that borders on the unbelievable. One communications expert called the delete and hide strategy slightly idiotic, which frankly seems generous given the circumstances. Did nobody on their team understand how social media works in the year of our Lord 2025? The attempted cover-up transformed what could have been a minor awkward moment into a months-long scandal that just keeps growing larger. Had they simply left the photograph where it was, it would have cycled through the news within a day or two. People might have noted the timing, a few commentators might have raised eyebrows, and then the world would have moved on to the next celebrity drama, as it always does. Instead, the mysterious deletion became the story. The weeks of speculation became the story. And now Kim Kardashian's podcast revelation has become the story. They have created a scandal with infinite lives, and every attempt to bury it just makes it resurrect stronger than before. Kim keeping this narrative alive proves a crucial point that the Sussexes desperately need to understand. They cannot control stories when they are dealing with people who have equally powerful, or in this case far more sophisticated, public relations operations. The Kardashian media machine has been handling crises for over 2 decades. They have survived scandals that would have ended most celebrity careers. They know exactly how to manage information, when to release it, and how to frame it for maximum strategic benefit. The Sussexes, by contrast, seem to think that demanding photos disappear and refusing to comment will somehow make controversies go away. It is almost touching in its naivety. This catastrophic mishandling comes at the worst possible time for Meghan's broader brand ambitions. Her as-ever lifestyle venture has been plagued by reports of wickless candles that customers cannot actually light. Netflix has allegedly been offloading her merchandise rather than selling it through normal channels. Quality control disasters have dogged virtually every product launch. And now, on top of all these business struggles, they have demonstrated to the entire world that they cannot even manage a party photograph without creating an international incident. One industry observer noted that investors and business partners are watching this chaos and drawing obvious conclusions about the Sussexes' judgment. But the Kardashian fallout is not an isolated incident, and when you examine the pattern of Hollywood rejections the Sussexes have accumulated, the picture becomes even more troubling. The relationship collapse with the Kardashians follows a devastating pattern that has been building since Harry and Meghan arrived in California with such fanfare and such certainty that Hollywood would embrace them. Remember when Spotify executives allegedly called them grifters after the disastrous end of their podcast deal? Remember when Netflix began distancing itself from their projects, reducing involvement and showing none of the enthusiasm that characterized their initial $100 million arrangement? Remember the Sundance Film Festival appearance that was supposed to rehabilitate their image but instead generated new controversy? The Sussexes seem to have a special talent for turning opportunities into disasters. The Sundance situation is particularly revealing. Reports emerged that Meghan demanded to speak before the director of the Cookie Queens documentary, a film she was attached to as an executive producer. For anyone unfamiliar with film festival protocol, allow me to explain why this matters. Directors are the creative visionaries behind films. They are the ones who spent years developing projects, who made the artistic choices, who deserve recognition for their work. Executive producers, particularly celebrity executive producers, whose main contribution is often lending their name for marketing purposes, typically defer to the creative team. Meghan apparently did not get that memo. Industry insiders suggest the incident alienated the creative team and reinforced a growing perception that the Sussexes view their involvement in projects as primarily about their own promotion rather than supporting the actual work. One source familiar with the film industry said there is a difference between executive producers who genuinely invest in projects and celebrities who trade on their names for credits. Another observed that Hollywood has seen enough celebrity vanity productions to recognize the pattern. The fact that Cookie Queen still has no distribution deal despite Sussex involvement that was supposed to attract attention suggests that even Netflix passed on acquiring it under their first refusal agreement. The grifters accusation from Spotify continues to echo through industry conversations. When a major media company calls you that word, on or off the record, it sends a message to every other potential partner. It says the Sussexes promise more than they deliver. It says working with them is more trouble than it is worth. It says the royal brand does not translate into commercial success. And with every subsequent failure, from the podcast collapse to the Netflix struggles to the lifestyle brand disasters, that reputation solidifies further. One entertainment executive summed up the Hollywood View bluntly, saying they have burned through their goodwill faster than anyone expected. Another noted that the Sussexes arrived with a limited window of opportunity and have spent most of it on projects that went nowhere. The Kardashian fallout is simply the latest example of a relationship that started with promise and ended with public embarrassment. But perhaps the most damaging aspect of this scandal is the contrast it creates with how actual royals handle their public relationships, and what King Charles has accomplished recently makes Harry look even more foolish. While Harry and Meghan have been fumbling their celebrity relationships and creating international incidents over party photographs, King Charles has been demonstrating what genuine royal influence actually looks like. Reports emerged recently that the king personally intervened to get Donald Trump to walk back comments about British troops potentially being deployed alongside American forces. Think about that for a moment. Charles used his diplomatic relationships to protect British service members from being drawn into controversial political statements. He wielded actual soft power in service of actual national interests, and he did it without creating a single headline about his methodology. The palace operates with a level of diplomatic finesse that the Sussexes can only dream about achieving. When Charles engages with world leaders, there are no panicked phone calls demanding posts be deleted. There are no months of speculation about what went wrong. There are no podcasts where the other party reveals embarrassing details about miscommunication and amateur behavior. The work happens quietly, effectively, and with results that actually matter. Trump has never publicly thrown Charles under the bus, despite their very different political positions, because the king understands how to maintain relationships across ideological divides. One royal correspondent observed that Charles took a calculated risk with his Trump outreach that could have been a diplomatic nightmare if handled incorrectly. The fact that it succeeded demonstrates the kind of genuine relationship building that comes from decades of experience and institutional wisdom. Another commentator noted the stark contrast between this sophisticated diplomacy and Harry's approach to public life, which seems to involve lurching from controversy to controversy while wondering why nobody takes him seriously anymore. This comparison highlights exactly what Harry gave up when he walked away from the royal family. He traded access to genuine influence, the ability to affect real outcomes for real people, for the chance to chase photo opportunities with reality television stars. He exchanged a platform that could have made a genuine difference in veterans' lives for executive producer credits on documentaries that cannot find distribution. He left behind an institution with centuries of diplomatic expertise to build an organization that cannot even coordinate a social media post without creating an international scandal. The people around Harry must see this contrast clearly. They must understand that while he attends parties in Montecito and frets about how photographs play in the British press, his father is quietly shaping international relationships that affect millions of lives. The difference between inherited influence wisely deployed and inherited influence squandered has never been more apparent. But as devastating as these contrasts are, the real question is what happens next for Harry and Meghan as their Hollywood dream continues to collapse around them. Kim Kardashian just proved beyond any reasonable doubt that in the celebrity public relations wars, the Sussexes are hopelessly and embarrassingly outmatched by people who actually understand how this game is played. The woman who turned a leaked tape into a billion-dollar empire just casually exposed Harry and Meghan as panicking amateurs who cannot even coordinate a party photograph without creating an international incident. And she did it while saying nice things about Meghan's mother, which is the kind of strategic genius that the Sussex team cannot even begin to comprehend. The Montecito party scandal represents absolutely everything that is wrong with Harry and Meghan's approach to their post-royal life. They seek celebrity clout and A-list validation, then immediately panic about how their choices will be perceived by the audiences they claim to have left behind. They approve photo opportunities designed to make them look glamorous and connected, then demand those photos disappear when someone remembers they are supposed to care about things like Remembrance Day. They try to have it both ways, and they end up with nothing but embarrassment and burned bridges. With the Kardashians now apparently off their social calendar, the Sussexes have managed to alienate yet another powerful Hollywood family. Their celebrity circle is shrinking rapidly, and the people who remain in their orbit must be wondering when their turn will come to be thrown under the bus, or simply discarded when the relationship no longer serves Sussex interests. Spotify called them grifters. Netflix has distanced itself. Sundance became a controversy. And now the reality television dynasty that actually knows how to manage fame has publicly exposed their incompetence. The question that should be keeping Meghan and Harry awake at night is brutally simple. If they cannot even handle a party photograph without creating an international incident that lasts for months and destroys a friendship with one of the most famous families in America, how can they possibly build a successful brand? How can they ask investors to trust their judgment? How can they expect business partners to believe they know what they are doing? The evidence is overwhelming, and it is damning. They do not have the skills, they do not have the team, and they clearly do not have the self-awareness to recognize how badly they are failing. The walls of their California dream are not crumbling, they have already crumbled. What remains is just the desperate scramble to pretend otherwise, and every new scandal makes that pretense harder to maintain. The Sussexes wanted to control their own